Welcome to Spacevidcast 5.09 for Saturday, June 9th, 2012. Almost got the month wrong. My name is Benjamin Higginbotham. With me, as always, beautiful, lovely, wonderful, talented, and awesome, credible Carrie Ann Higginbotham will be your hosts for this particular show, as if that ever changes.
Thank you. You always say that. I always think it sounds really weird.
I know.
Like sometimes there's other hosts. Or sometimes we have a different show.
So let's get started with some space news. One of the bigger items that got mentioned was that a water world was discovered about 41 light years away from us, which sounds awesome and impressive, like it's filled with water, there could be a whole bunch of life. But there are a few, ooh, hey, I'm gonna use this as an example. I didn't even plan on this.
Okay.
But there are a few caveats with this.
Yes.
First, it's tidally locked to its sun. That means if this is the sun and this is the world, unlike our Earth that spins, right, so you get day and night, it always, the same side always faces the sun. That was a terrible example. You couldn't see any of it.
Kind of like...
Kind of like our moon.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly, right? The same
question.
side always faces the sun, which means that particular side, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it gets up to like 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which is like 1,700 degrees Celsius.
Right, like Jet for me in the chat room is saying frozen on one side and boiling on the other.
Frozen on one side, boiling on the other. So that's a problem. And because it's so hot on one side, we don't really think there's a whole lot of atmosphere, which does mean that there's not going to be a whole lot of transference of that heat around the planet like you would have here. But much like when we went to the moon and we had these like little slivers, zones that you could stay in, we think there might be something similar there, where there actually are these thin slivers of liquid water kind of at the edge of day and night.
Between boiling and freezing?
Between boiling and freezing, there's like a 1 mile little strip of water or something like that, kind of in between that might actually be habitable by either alien life or by something. We don't really know. So that's kind of the exciting news with that particular planet is that, okay, yeah, you can't do anything with the whole planet, but there might be something kind of around that edge, that rim where day turns to night.
Is it literally a ball of water? I mean, there's land there?
I don't know if we know that much. I know the side that's facing the sun is like gas water. It's gases in like little pockets of liquid water, but it's just boiled off water. The other side is just frozen. So I don't actually know if there might be land, but
Well, someone in the chat room asked if there was any surfing. There was that, and then I thought, well, if we were going to set that up, if we could ever get there and then set it up as a depot and to be able to use the water.
It's still 41 light years. We haven't figured out that whole.
I said if we get there, that was in my sentence.
That was in your sentence.
Okay, good. That, how do we set up a boat system or, if there's anything to anchor to in order to stay within that 1 little mile.
Well, I said 1 mile. I mean, it's small.
But to stay within that sliver, right, in order to use that water, et cetera, et cetera.
That'd be interesting. Jim Noble says, wouldn't the Terminator edge be where ice is boiling away? Well, you're going from boiling away to frozen. So somewhere in there,
there is a little bit
in the middle, somewhere between boiling and frozen is liquid. At least that's the theory, right? So, because it's not going to go from boiling to frozen. Or maybe
that would be impressive.
That would be kind of like you step from one side, you're freezing. You step anyhow. So that is the news with the water planet. I thought it was kind of interesting and kind of cool.
Interesting.
Oh, we did the Venus transit in the opening, and that was the last time in the next 100 years you're going to be able to see that from Earth.
Right.
However, that is not the last time in the next 100 years you can see a transit of Venus across the sun.
Okay.
If you opt to live on Mars, then the next transit's in 2030. I learned this in the chat room prior to the show. 2030 is the next opportunity of viewing a Venus transit. You just need to live on Mars instead of on Earth.
Well, my understanding is that within the next decade, there's going to be another transit. It's just not going to be Venus. I believe it's Mercury. So you will be able to see another transit.
So this next story is all you.
It's my story.
I'm done.
Okay. Well then, as being space geeks that we are, we do have a tendency to dabble in some sci-fi, right? And real science has influenced sci-fi just as much as sci-fi has influenced real science.
Yes.
Okay. So in that, we do have a tendency to go out and see some sci-fi movies, for instance. One of my favorites being The Core. But there's a new one that's out recently.
We need to drill to the center of the Earth and restart the core using unobtainium, which has not been used in one movie, but now 2 at the very least.
Okay, so the reason it's one of my favorites is because the science really is so terrible. It's laughably terrible. And there's a new movie out. You may have heard of it. It is the prequel to the Aliens series. It is called Prometheus. Now, the thing is that when we as space geeks go to these movies, and we do have a little bit of science knowledge, we're interested to see how perverse it can be in Hollywood land, as it were, right? Apparently, with Prometheus...
I've actually laughed out loud in theaters and had to stifle my laugh.
Yes. And I will say a little bit of a spoiler alert. I haven't seen the movie, but there is one scene where they are on... they're in some sort of on an alien world or planet or something along those lines. It's already been determined that the air is not breathable, but one of our characters takes off their headgear. And everyone kind of goes, wait, what? Me in the theater, I would say, what is going on? This can't possibly be right. And in fact, it can be correct. There can be, it is a proven scientific fact that there can be little pockets of oxygen even in these normally uninhabitable worlds or unbreathable worlds. And it is proven by people down here on Earth. Anymore, there is actually, I believe it started in 2008, but I could be incorrect on that date. There is a partnership where Hollywood is opening themselves up to talking with real scientists, and not just always going to NASA on the really, really big things, but even these little itty-bitty sort of scenes in different sci-fi movies where a lot of it can still be science fiction, but now they are having these communications with real scientists who are doing these real studies about these real instances.
So better science in movies.
Better science in movies, including science fiction, which I think is really fantastic. And I think it's very, very cool. And I'm very, very thankful for it.
So how does that lead into our next story?
So the next story is talking about Seth MacFarlane, which many of you may know from the Family Guy series. He's done a lot of...
I feel like I should just bring up this banner and let people soak it in for just a moment.
Sure, if you like, go right ahead.
There you go. So that's the news story.
Seth MacFarlane bringing back Cosmos, which was the Carl Sagan series in the, 70s and 80s, or just 80s, where a lot of people, again, a lot of space geeks really enjoy this series. It's Carl Sagan just spouting off all of the mysteries of the world and the universe, and very interesting, very enlightening. Sort of the Mr. Rogers to the universe, if you will.
Okay.
That's kind of how I saw him. And it's obviously with Carl Sagan now being gone. Cosmos, the series, of course, is very, very gone. But Seth MacFarlane, the creator of Family Guy, of all people in the world, is interested in bringing it back. You want me to tell him why, or you want to do this first?
There was a time not that long ago when we had an enthusiasm in America for things like human achievement. We took a lot of pride in the fact that we put a man in space, or put a man on the moon, or that when we launched the Voyager spacecraft in the 70s. Those were sources of national pride, and somewhere along the line, as we've become a less pragmatic, less logic-oriented society, and more of a kind of frou-frou spiritualist religious society, we've kind of shunned that stuff. We seem to view science as something not to be trusted, and there's no reason for it. It's ludicrous. It's come out of nowhere, and it doesn't make any sense. Everything that we use on a day-to-day basis that makes our lives better in every sense can really be attributed to scientific advancement in one way or another.
So the really cool thing that I was just talking about, these two stories obviously are very, very linked. And with Hollywood opening themselves up to speaking with scientists, they're doing it in kind of the cool sort of Hollywood way, where they might rent out a really cool club or a nightclub or a bar, or they might even open up their house. So like Ridley Scott would just throw a party that includes some NASA scientists and some Hollywood types, so they could kind of just talk about...
Maybe Spacevidcast too?
Sure.
Actually, I'd love to go there and do that live. Wouldn't that be awesome?
Talk about, you know, hey, I got this scene in this movie and I'm not really sure and if it could work, and oh yes, absolutely, and these are the reasons why it could work. And at one of these parties, Seth MacFarlane started rubbing elbows with Neil deGrasse Tyson. And as they formed a friendship and started communicating more, they realized that, yeah, Cosmos is kind of this really cool thing from the 80s. Carl Sagan, who was a teacher of deGrasse Tyson's, yes. And Seth MacFarlane never had a chance to meet him, but always really loved Cosmos and what have you. They decided to sort of reboot the entire series. And I think it's a really cool thing, and I think it's a really interesting way that it sort of went about itself. Does that make sense?
Sure, yeah.
So I'm really excited for that. It's supposed to be debuting a little bit later on this year, sometime in 2012, I believe the fall of 2012. You can go ahead and look for that on PBS.
And
there you go.
And before we go to break, I was actually going to put us into break, but
Yes.
I think this is an important news story to cover, which is China.
Oh, yes.
So China is is announced as of yesterday, this last Saturday, they're going to do a manned space docking in early July, just a few weeks away. So we just had SpaceX do their big shindig with the International Space Station unmanned, but still a big deal. We've got China talking about doing manned, and now keep in mind, China has already sent humans up.
Right.
They've already got the beginning parts of their space station Qingdao-1 floating around Earth right now. Now they're talking about doing a manned docking with that station. That's going to be Shenzhou 9, I believe it is, docking with Qingdao. It's Qingdao, right?
I think it is.
Tingong, no, maybe it's Tingong, I think. So this, without sounding too dramatic, this is really freaking exciting time to be alive, right?
Cool.
We've got China going up there saying, look, we can do this stuff. We've got SpaceX going up there saying, we can do this stuff. We've got Bigelow forming partnerships with SpaceX. We've got Virgin Galactic. Really exciting time to be alive.
Really exciting.
Really a lot of great stuff happening in space. And you know, I wish it happened faster. I wish it was like the iPhone kind of, you know, every year these but I mean,
new.
Even without that, we're still getting a lot of really great, amazing things in 2012. So to that end, I think we're going to head into break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about our main topic, which is NASA, specifically the penny for NASA stuff, the bake sale for NASA stuff, and some of the Neil deGrasse Tyson that they tend to use a lot of his excerpts for these videos. So stay with us. We'll be right back right after this break.
Space, it's a $300 billion industry worldwide. NASA is actually a tiny percent of that. Interesting how small a percent NASA is to the total world spending of space. That little bit, however, is what inspires dreams. Every corporation in here with representatives to this conference, if you ever even touched a science mission, you lead off with that in your quarterly reports, in your annual reports. Because it inspires, it is the act of discovery that empowers nations and the world to undertake these activities. We know this. Apollo 8, that was the first time anybody ever left Earth with a destination in mind. Yeah, it figurated around the moon. Photo of Earth rising over the lunar landscape. We all know it. Earthrise over the moon. There was Earth, seen not as the map maker would have you identify it. No, the countries were not color-coded with boundaries. It was seen as nature intended it to be viewed. Oceans, land, clouds. We went to the moon, and we discovered Earth. I claim we discovered Earth for the first time. How does that affect culture? I got a list. The instant that photo comes out, that is the identifying cover picture of the whole Earth catalog. Thinking about Earth as a whole, not as a place where nations war, as a whole. 1970, the Comprehensive Clean Air Act is passed. Earth Day was birthed March 1970. The Environmental Protection Agency was founded in 1970. The organization Doctors Without Borders was founded in 1971. Where do you even get that phrase from? No one thought of that phrase before that photo was published. Because every globe in your classroom has countries painted on it. DDT gets banned in 1972. We're still going to the moon. We're still looking back to Earth. Clean Water Act, 1971. 1972, Endangered Species Act. The catalytic converter gets put in 1973. Unleaded gas, 1973. We're still at war in Vietnam. There's still campus unrest. Yet we found the time to start thinking about Earth. That is space operating on our culture, and you cannot even put a price on that. That is a nation, that is a world reacting to a new perspective on what it is to be alive on this planet that we all share. We need to look at NASA not as a handout, but as an investment. Because as goes the health of spacefaring ambitions, so too goes the spiritual, the emotional, the intellectual, the creative, and the economic ambitions of a nation. So goes the future of America.
All right, so open the this segment with that particular video because you know, we've been, a lot of these organizations are using Neil deGrasse Tyson and his very passionate speeches, and I don't think I can really disagree with anything he said in that particular, I don't want to call it a tirade, but you know, speech.
Right.
Right. Well, he was very passionate.
Yes.
Very, very passionate. And from these, one of his talks, he said, look, we give NASA half a penny on the dollar of our federal budget. What would happen if we just doubled that? 1 penny on the dollar. And that's where pennyfornasa.org kind of comes from. The concept, at least, is from that hearing. And I would love to start a conversation about this in the chat room, and you should leave your comments on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Spacevidcast.com's website. Do you think it's a good idea to double NASA's budget? And I'll give you kind of my concept here, which is, or overarching theme, which is NASA of 2012 is not the same NASA of 1969.
Right.
It's a very different organization. The structure of the organization is actually different, but more to the point, NASA's charter in 1969 could fit on half a sheet of a single piece of paper. Their goal was to send a human to the moon and bring them back safely.
Right.
That's what NASA was to do.
Okay.
If you look at NASA and what they're to do today, even things like the Space Launch System, it's this book this thick of law that they have to follow. It's completely different. The inspirational, huge ventures that we had in the 60s and early 70s, that happens with organizations who are free to actually let the scientists do what they need to do. And NASA does not have that anymore. We have Congress getting in their way, developing laws that keep NASA in a jobs program state. So even if we double NASA's budget from 50 cents to 1 penny on the dollar. Even if we do that, that does not mean we will be going back to the moon. That does not mean we will be going to Mars. All that means is that the money we have given them will get funneled into other weird political areas to keep people employed. That's what that means, in my opinion.
Okay. So what you're saying is that no matter how much money we give NASA, because of the way that it's structured now,
yes,
it wouldn't necessarily do what we think it could or should do.
Yeah, I think it's a two-problem approach.
Okay.
One, I actually do not believe NASA has enough money. And you look at what they're trying to do, and there isn't enough. You really want to inspire people, you got to get out of their way. So they do not have enough money. But the second part of that is even if you gave them enough money, you run into problem number two, which is Congress has to get out of the way. Let them be scientists. Don't make it into a jobs program. Don't make it an inefficient government program. Back in the Apollo era, it was you could waste anything but time. Right? You could waste money, whatever. We had to beat the Russians. That was the political landscape.
Right.
That's what it was. That is not the political landscape today.
Right.
Today, you can waste anything but money. And unfortunately, with the way Congress is organizing everything, forcing solid fuels on these vehicles, forcing technology decisions just to keep people employed, that doesn't make an efficient organization. That doesn't allow them to make an efficient vehicle. And as soon as you add inefficiencies to everything, well, you start going back to flags and footprints again. You don't go to a sustainable model. And we don't want to just explore the stars. We want to get out there and we want to stay out there.
Right.
Because if we do what we did with Apollo, we go out there and we recoil back, we'll be stuck back here again for 50 to 100 years. I don't want that. I don't think you want that. I want to go out, I want to continue exploring. I want to go to Mars and I want to stay there. I want to go to the moon and I want to stay there. And I don't want to stop there either. I want to keep going. But if we keep getting in the way, we being Congress keeps getting in the way, that's not going to solve anything. So giving NASA 50 more cents on every dollar, giving them a full penny, 50 cents. Half. I keep saying 50 cents. No. I keep saying 50 cents. It's 0.5 cents. I'm sorry. My decimal's in one wrong spot. Giving them half a cent more on every dollar, giving them a full penny on every dollar, doubling their budget, doesn't actually solve anything.
Interesting. So, okay. So then that sort of, to a certain extent, brings us to the bake sale for NASA, which is going on today across the U.S. I was going to say across the country, but I do realize we have an international audience here, so I need to be a little bit more specific in that. But it's going on across the U.S. today. So if you're watching us live, it's going on today. If you're watching us on demand, I apologize. It happened before you. But the idea is that there literally are bake sales and car washes and shoe shining events that are going on all across the country. And they're calling it the bake sale for NASA. And I think what some people are having an issue with is, well, what happens when you have this bake sale, when you have this shoe shine, when you have this car wash, and the average Joe Schmo who doesn't care anything about NASA comes through and gets his car washed and says, hey, y'all did a great job, here's $5. What happens to that money? Do we really give that to NASA? Can NASA really take that money? And is that even legal in any way, shape, or form? The problem with all of this is...
Good point. Hadn't thought of that.
Right? That's not what's going on.
So what is going on?
What is going on is Alan Stern, who is the Horizon's Pluto Probe lead.
Pluto Plub. Overheard on Spacevidcast, Pluto Plub. All right, yep.
You love me. You all love me. You all love me. Alan Stern has put this together and wanted to do these things for outreach.
Yeah, and that actually kind of makes sense.
That does kind of make sense, because how many times do you go by the corner and you see somebody's doing a car wash and you say, hey, what's that for? And somebody says, well, car wash for NASA. And you go, car wash for NASA? Well, my car could totally be washed. How much is it? It's free. It's only tips. That's awesome. Or free as in we're not taking any money. That's doubly awesome. I will totally get my car washed for NASA. And what do I have to do? I get to listen to some real actual scientists and people who do work for NASA, people who do work at the SETI organization, like people who really work at these centers are the ones who are giving away cookies, who are washing cars for free, and who are giving shoe shines apparently in Colorado because there's some really weird laws out there. And I think that's awesome. You get to talk to actual scientists and figure out what NASA really does and why it's important, not just to the space nerd people who like to look in their silly little telescopes and want to watch Star Trek, but actually real how it impacts the average person. And for an outreach organization, in that capacity, I think that is brilliant. Totally brilliant.
It's interesting. It's an interesting concept.
I think it's just as good as the Solar Dynamics Observatory having a booth at WonderCon.
I guess I don't have an issue with it. I think my fundamental issue is, why does it have to be NASA? Why do we always have to say it's got to be NASA that does all this stuff? Why can't anyone do it?
Anyone can do it.
Well, no, but I mean, why can't it be SpaceX? Why can't it be Orbital? Why can't it be Dave Maston? Why can't it be John Carmack?
Because if you go into North Carolina, who's ever heard of Dave Maston before?
But why can't we use the bake sale for that? Why can't it be a bake sale
Because
for the
again,
Cosmos? Why does it have to be a bake sale for NASA?
All right, no, it can be for the Cosmos. That's totally fine. So take this idea and run with it. But really, the average person driving down the street who says, shoe shine,
okay,
what's that for?
So as Zigger says in the chat room, it has to be NASA because NASA is the iconic space agency. They were the iconic space agency. Now, maybe I'm out of touch, but
just
are
like
they
Mickey Mouse, it's one of those few symbols that everybody knows. Coca-Cola, NASA, Mickey Mouse, Nike, right? I mean, they're all up there.
By propagating that, aren't we forcing this to kind of get stretched out longer? I mean, you know what I mean? By propagating the idea that it has to be NASA, aren't we then putting all of our eggs in the NASA basket? Can't we already start to say, look, it is the Cosmos?
But so then maybe that's the debate.
All right.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, again, look, this is our main topic of the show. This is what we want to hear from you guys. And, well, you know, we ask these questions. I don't know what the right answer is. I think it's fun to talk.
We clearly don't know anything. Hi.
It's fun to talk about this stuff. So, again, leave your comments on YouTube. And we love your video comments, most of all, right? Because when you leave a video comment, we can incorporate that back into the show, and we can continue the conversation. We can get people thinking about this stuff. Like, hey, what is the best way to get out to the stars, and where should we be spending our time and money and effort? Why, you know, this is important stuff. So leave a video comment, like 30 seconds to a minute, maybe 90 seconds, and I'm not what?
No, you're fine.
Oh,
wow, you're so. Yeah, you're fine. Keep going, but I want to say something before we go to break. That's what that means. Ready, go.
Okay. All right. Go.
Wow. The song, in case you care, Bake Sale for NASA, because there is a song called Bake Sale for NASA, through Monday at midnight UTC is 25% off.
Ooh.
So there you go, and now it's perfectly not timed well at all.
All right. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, speaking of those comments, we're actually going to talk about your comments from last week's show. So stay with us, and here's a little surprise.
So let's hold a bake sale for NASA. Show our love for a program that actually works. The cookies are sure to be out of this world. We could even have Astros as clerks. Give folks a chance to learn firsthand why we need these adventures in space. How it affects them directly at home and elevates the whole human race.
Microphones. So that was before we went to break, you were talking about Bake Sale for NASA.
Yes.
That's available on iTunes, although you don't get the discount on iTunes. I think you have to go to our website to get the, right?
No, I think it is discounted on iTunes.
Oh, all right.
It should only be $1 is what it is. So
right.
Either go to, and it's in the show notes, so you can either go to the show notes and go there, or iTunes, but it should only be $1 through midnight UTC Monday.
So last week we talked about a bunch of different things. The main topic of the show being
Yes. What was the main topic of our show last week that we just did?
I don't remember.
Really?
Yeah.
That's highly entertaining.
Do you remember?
No, I'm looking it up right now. Well,
right.
SpaceX mostly.
Oh, that's right. That's why. It was the whole SpaceX did this huge successful launch. But we also talked about things like sending a balloon into space, and I said, hey,
not a balloon. It was CubeSat. CubeSat for $350.
Well, yeah, it was on a balloon.
Oh, you're right.
So
it was on
a balloon.
Sorry.
Sending a CubeSat into space on a little cube or on a balloon, and first off, I keep saying space. I don't mean space. I mean near space. Near space and space are two completely different things. And anytime I screw that up, you guys feel free to just berate me in comments because they are different and I shouldn't say space. Near space. It's very far away from actual space. But you do actually get a nice shot of the curvature of the Earth,
yes.
which unfortunately because I went back there, I'm like, what is this guy talking about? So here's the comment. Can you really send something to space for just $350? Where can I send it? Because I really like more info on that. Can you watch it in space too? And that's from YouTuber Southwest Airlines 737. And the answer is, no, you can't actually send it to space. You can send it to near space. So we showed a shot in last week's show of kind of what you get in near space.
I will argue that for the average person who's not hugely interested or involved in the space industry, that as soon as you can see the curvature of the Earth, that's space.
Yeah, but you can kind of see the curvature of the Earth from an airplane.
I'm just saying.
As Tawikit is saying, 30 kilometers isn't even near space. 100 kilometers is kind of considered the boundary of space, 60 miles. So you're like a third of the way to space.
I'm just saying. Don't they say that that's the hardest part, though? And then from there you can go anywhere?
No, that is not what they say.
Sure.
No,
right.
No. Oh, God. So $350 to space? No. $350 to near space? I am going to call it near space. To near space, yes, but that's not actually going to get you to space. So there you go. I think this is my favorite comment of all time.
Okay.
Would you like to read this?
Sure.
All right, here you go.
Go ahead. All right. I can't watch this anymore. 32 out of 34 minutes is enough. I can't stand it. Going on about SpaceX passion, NASA isn't emotional enough. Hey, space is serious stuff. How can you guys forget about Columbia and Challenger and all those other unfortunates before? Don't make it sound like a god. Really? Can I say that?
Oh yeah, no, we're rated PG, whatever it is.
Oh, sound like a goddamn mall arcade video game event. Sorry, I can't watch this anymore. I love space and astronomy, and I'll stick with NASA at all. Thanks. Have a nice transit. That's by Flynn Brown, 2001.
Well.
So, Flynn is a little opinionated, and that's awesome.
No, I'm not sure. So Zigger asks if it was a trolling.
No, Flynn Brown actually made quite a number of comments, most of them being in my favor.
Oh, yeah.
Which I also find very unusual considering I'm the one who knows the least amount about this industry. But I think it might have something to do with the shirt I was wearing at the time. So, yeah, and one of the other comments was that he wanted you to shut up and relax and sit
let you
back
talk.
And let me talk, which we all know what happens when Carrie Ann starts spouting out of the mouth. We start getting SSME coffee tables.
Well, yes, but that's still classic Spacevidcast right there is what that is. Here's why passion is important, right? Just because you're passionate doesn't mean that you don't think it's serious, right? Passionate is not joking around. Passionate isn't doing things quickly. Passionate is just that, is having passion. Every human has passion. We all do. We all have. We're passionate about something. For some people, it's maybe family. Some people, it's space or hobbies or whatever. We all have passion. We're certainly passionate about something. The problem with NASA, specifically NASA TV, is that they strip all the passion out of it. It's like watching robots. It's unrelatable. I am a space geek. Yes.
I will say, and this is a point that you have also made before, that NASA TV is specifically designed for informational purposes.
For news services.
It is for news services, so that news can say, hey, did anything interesting happen at NASA? Let's go look. Oh, here's a package where they very boringly talk about what happened. Clink! And
Right.
they then dump that into the regular news segment where the news person is then, God rest Walter Cronkite's soul, say, this is some really cool stuff that happened at NASA. And then NASA goes, this is some really cool stuff that happened at NASA. Wasn't that great?
Right.
So there's that.
As the chat room is saying,
So
and here's
NASA
why.
TV doesn't have to be passionate.
No, they do, and here's why. And they absolutely do. Because they have to change with the times. Just because you were started as a newsfeed service, that's not what they're doing anymore. NASA Select is gone. So that's not their role. And in addition, they have multiple channels now. They have a newsfeed service channel specifically for newsfeeds.
Have you seen the kids feed? That's passionate.
No, it is not. So the reason it's important is for exactly what the chat room is saying. Lunar
Yes.
Baby,
Yes.
passion is contagious and inspiring. Arc Dude, passion will win the hearts and minds on budget issues. And absolutely, this is absolutely
As
correct.
apparently so will free car washes, shoe shines, and
But if they're
cookies.
passionate about it, then yeah, maybe.
Yes.
Right? And this is what is missing from the face of NASA. This is not to say that NASA is without passion. Far from it. I said this on last week's show. They actually are very passionate people, but it is stripped out of the front-facing version of NASA, which you see at home from NASA's standpoint.
I think that's also changing a little bit, though, right? There's a number.
I would disagree.
There's a number of people who work for NASA who very out and out work for NASA that
Yep.
says, you know, hey, I am speaking for NASA. Curiosity, Bob Jacobs, like there's a ton of people who work for NASA. Bob Jacobs is a PAO, a public affairs officer, right? So his job is to be one of the many microphones for NASA, right? And he's on Twitter. And he speaks a lot about regular, normal. He goes to the gym and he has pizza almost every single Friday. And he gets excited. Actually, one of the news stories that we had in our show came from him. And which one was it? It was not the Venus Transit. It was actually the one about Hollywood opening up to scientists. I got that from Bob Jacobs on Twitter. And so I think it's slow. It's glacial at best. But I do believe that there is a certain face of NASA that is changing and that is out there and that is quite passionate. NASA TV, if you want to just rag on NASA TV, that's fine. We'll rag on NASA TV. I love George Diller, but the man can put me to sleep, all right? And not
Launching
in a good
harmony
way.
to the heavens. Sorry.
Right? You know, we've interviewed George and Allard and Bob, right? And they're great people. And they're interesting, right? Allard is a really cool guy, and Bob is they are passionate.
But there's a distinct difference between the passion we saw in SpaceX.
Well, but again, that
People
that
were
goes back
crying.
to...
They clearly gave, they gave their heart and soul and all into this thing. And you could see it. Their whole lives were poured into this to make this successful. And you could see it, and you felt for them.
And yet, the one girl who showed any emotion on comms sounded way out of place.
Fair. That's fair. All right.
Just saying. Because you can't tell me there weren't people at NASA who were jumping up and down and cheering. It's
So-
just they weren't on camera.
And Trebles brings up a very good point. So SpaceX people won't be crying in the 167th launch. Maybe, but right now SpaceX keeps. I think maybe this is just a difference in culture. SpaceX keeps pushing forward. They don't just say, okay, we've designed this. Let's just launch 10 million
And
of
we've
these.
made this connection before. SpaceX right now is like NASA back then. People are
So
like
then-
in jeans and t-shirts, and they got their slide rules in their back pockets.
So then, based on that, why aren't we promoting more organizations like SpaceX as opposed to promoting, saying, having a bake sale for NASA? If SpaceX is like NASA back then, if SpaceX is the inspiring thing that's getting people excited about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, then
Well-
why are we continuing to harp on NASA? Let's move over and refocus our efforts on the things that are inspiring.
All right, but what about CC Dev? SpaceX is getting some money from NASA. So theoretically,
Absolutely.
if NASA gets more money, they have more money to dole out to people like SpaceX.
Absolutely true. Well, no.
And Dave Maston.
No, that's not true.
Okay.
They were NASA was just required to down select. They are now. It's not giving more money to more companies. It's giving a lot more money to much fewer companies.
Why were they required
Because
to down
of
select?
Congress.
So we just need to get rid of Congress.
Yes.
So we need a bake sale for getting rid of Congress.
Yeah, apparently. Or telling Congress to not mess with NASA.
All right.
That's what we need to bake
I can
sale.
get behind that.
Yep. All right. So, all right. That was that comment. And actually, Zigger says we're not harping on NASA. I hear SpaceX and Maston as much as NASA these days. But Zigger, do you hear that as much
That's
as
because
NASA?
you only listen to us, Zigger.
I was just
going to
ask, do you hear that outside of the SpaceX community just as much, or do you really hear that only inside the SpaceX? I'm sorry, Spacevidcast community. Do you hear that outside the Spacevidcast community, or only inside? Because we'll talk about it a lot.
And I'll tell you what. You go to Minnesota, and you barely will even hear the word NASA.
That's true. That's very true. Final comment for the show, and then we'll go into Spacevidcast After Dark. Oh, you forgot to do the stuff. Well, I admire the Mars One sheer's audacity. This was the going to Mars by like 2021 or something like that.
Yes.
The reality TV angle and overall sketchiness of their mission roadmap doesn't make for a lot of confidence. So basically, the Mars One is kind of based on a reality TV show. That was, how would you say that? Nias 37? Sure, something like that. I agree.
Or Naias.
Sure. I kind of agree, right? I'm not sure that the Mars One concept is realistic or good for anyone, right? If you
It is interesting, though. What they want to do
I don't want any
is
more
by
false
2030,
hope.
make sure that there are some people on Mars.
It's not even 2030, it's like
2020?
Sure.
Sure.
Like that.
And then every 2 years, send up more people.
I think it's 2023.
Sure, great. Within the next 20 to 30 years, what they want to do is get some people on Mars. Then every 2 years after that, send more people to Mars. But the entire thing is going to be broadcast Big Brother style. So hopefully they'll have some sexy tweens or people in their 20s hooking up with other sexy scientist types that are on Mars, and we can watch them with like night cam. I'm not really sure. The whole thing seems really, I love the idea of thinking outside of the box to get people to Mars, and that's awesome, but doing it in the Road Rules Real World Challenge way seems a little far-fetched to me.
Yeah, I'm not, yeah.
I said tweens, I didn't mean tweens, I apologize. I completely take that back, I meant 20s.
Sure. I don't think, it's hard because much of what happens in space is very slow and deliberate. Mm-hmm. The other stuff that happens in space is kind of disgusting. Space sickness being one of them.
Are we going to have like cameras in the bathroom too?
Yep, there's a lot of just not glamorous things that happen in space. And I'm trying to figure out how you make that into a cool TV show. And you put music in the background. You can take, let me put it this way, you can take 30 years of Space Shuttle and make a really good 3-minute clip.
Yes. Yes, you can.
Yeah, maybe even a 10-minute clip.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I don't know.
So anyhow, that's our show for this week. Once again, we'd love to hear from you guys. Leave your comments on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. Stick them on the Spacevidcast website, and we want to know what you think. Also, for those of you who are who are Spacevidcast Epic subscribers, After Dark is up next. After Dark is the show after the show where we talk about anything. Maybe it's space related, maybe it's not space related.
Probably
and
Disney.
Just log in. Could be Disney, right? We're excited about that. Just log into your Spacevidcast Epic account at spacevidcast.com/epic. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing. It's $100 a year, $10 a month, whichever you prefer, and it helps us produce the show. So it helps us get cameras, gears, stuff like that. And it also allows us to go out and do things like the AIAA meetings, the LA Space Salons.
Which, at the end of this month, the renowned Dr. Zubrin will be speaking about Mars.
I wonder what he thinks. Do you think he will tell us we should go to Mars?
No, that's
I
not
can't
like him at
imagine
all,
what
is
he's
it?
going to say. Exactly. So that will be coming up, and that we'll make that available to Spacevidcast Epic subscribers. And one little change that might be happening soon is that meetings like these, the AIAA meetings, LA Space Salons, will be made available to Spacevidcast Epic subscribers first for about a month. And then you'll get a reduced version of that, which you already get, for non-Epic subscribers. So more advantages to Spacevidcast Epic subscribers coming soon. On that note, thank you so much for watching. Are we going to see them? Yeah, we'll see them next week, right? It's not until June that we won't see them. So we'll see you guys.
You mean July?
Oh, I don't know what I
What
mean.
month is it?
We'll see you
Get
guys
us out
next
of
week.
here.